Live now. Welcome everyone to the Node Foundation Core Technical Committee meeting for February the 1st, 2017. We're going to go through a stand-up first and then onto our agenda. All that is linked in the issue link in the description for the live stream. So, stand up. We'll start first with Anna.
Hi, everyone. I did not do much this week. I just onboarded Yuta, a new collaborator,
This call
yesterday, I
is being
think.
recorded.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. Bradley.
Not much here. Went to TC39 last week. I'm having various email threads, starting to look at what we're going to be doing after shipping the initial implementation for ES modules and stuff they have planned down the line. So that's it.
Next is Colin, if he's here.
It doesn't look like he is. Next was me, Evan. I cut 7.5.0 release and then got a PR open for a guide on backporting PRs. Next is Jeremiah.
Hey, so earlier today I had scheduled an ES modules call with a couple of people who have experience teaching programming to new learners to get their opinions on what might be the easiest route for new people coming to the platform either now or in the future for what we do, and I will mention that later. Also, just miscellaneous stuff in my backlog, trying to review the millions of things that I've probably missed. Yeah, Tracy, if she's here, I don't think so. That would mean Fedor, James.
Yeah, I'm here. Not a terrible lot over the past week due to a variety of things, but got some more progress done on the HV2. Got some PRs landed. Few issues. I did get the deprecation policy PR landed. I finally got enough reviews on there to get that done, so I got that landed earlier this morning. I'm not in front of the list right now, so I'm not sure who's next.
I guess me, Josh. Nothing huge, mostly internal stuff, but try to do a couple of the diag-related things. Next up is Michael Dawson.
Great. I did some updates to the SmartOS build test job so we could allow the new version of V8 to land. Some minor tweaks to the benchmarking chart generation. We dropped out the 12x results and some other miscellaneous improvements. Did some work to try out the new mate coverage target in the CI and sort of make some review comments on that. Set up a couple special benchmarking meetings this week in terms of one's a benchmark that Intel is working on for Node.js, and the other one is program guided optimization. Ongoing work with the ABI stable module group of people who are working on that, and then just general review comments and lands in the repo. Next is Brian White.
I don't think he's here. I think he pre-filled.
Okay, so I think Miles is next.
Hey, sorry about that. Just stumbling with the UI here. So security release for V4 and V6 went out yesterday. I updated the RCs for the minor releases as well. I need to go through and collect a few more things on V4 for the cert related stuff. I'm going to be a little bit less hands-on. You may have noticed the last couple weeks in between switching gigs and figuring out where my time comes from, just kind of like getting used to it, but still plan to be involved like before. General review of PRs and issues. We did a minor release of Canary in the Gold Mine last week. Planning this week to get that back up to date with the ABI testers so we can get 5.5 landed into V7, as long as it works. And I was also at the TC39 last week as well. And next up is Ali.
All right, so didn't do a lot this week. Did work on some issues with the integration build where we integrate v8LKGR and Node. That's pretty much it. Next would be Rod if he's here, or Michael.
I think Rod should be here now, but I'm not sure.
Michael's definitely here. Why don't we go to Michael?
Yes, I'm here. So not much from me. PR and issue comments, and I opened last week the pull request to backport v8 5.5 in v7. And next is Saktipriyan.
Hi, I didn't get much time this week, so nothing to update here. Who else is left? Yeah.
I think it's me. Trevor's not, unless Trevor. Yeah, I don't see Trevor. Okay, hey, so I did the usual, fix a test here, review a PR there, take care of some semi-janitorial work there. But we have a full agenda, so let's get to it. Jeremiah, are you gonna take the reins on this, or do you want me to do it?
Oops. Yeah, I thought I was unmuted. Agenda. Speaking of which, we really need to swap these agendas so the agenda part doesn't exist and it's just like in the meeting, in the minutes. And that's always confusing. Let's just go over stuff from last week, I guess, first. Might make most sense. Updating the copyright. Do we have anything to talk about on that?
That would fall to Rod. Where we were at on that last was it needed to go to the board for review. And I believe it was supposed to come up on the board meeting on Monday. So if Rod can join in,
Okay.
then he can update it.
He's still trying to connect, but Uber Conference is not very happy with his computer. Let's see. Cool. Lib, be robust when process global is clobbered. Anything else to say on that?
I don't think the PR has been updated with that change to remove the non-writable bit.
Okay, so we're still just waiting there. Process warnings update that landed, and that will be coming in version 8, I believe. Deprecation policy also landed. If you have not yet seen it, I think that landed today. Assert enforce type strict and deep strict equal. I think we
So the issue
solved
there,
this last week.
the issue there was are we okay with what does stable mean? Does that mean because in the past we've used that to say no, we're not going to fix deep equal and deep strict equal to work with maps and sets and symbols, and I don't know if that was resolved last week because I wasn't here, but that was the crux of the issue. On the agenda again this week.
Okay. We'll talk about that this week then. Environment defined proxy. I think we said that we prefer to do that in userland if possible. So we would be looking at adding hooks to it, or at least suggesting that. Looks like that's happened. And there's a little bit of discussion there, but not too much. If anyone's interested, follow up on that. Deps add node in dash inspect. I don't remember actually discussing this much last week. I know that we do have node dash inspect is approved to come to the foundation. So I think we probably need to decide on that sometime. It might still be on our agenda. It is. And ES module discussion stuff. We're going to be talking about that today too. Is there anything else on the CTC review? So on CTC review in general, there's the copyright stuff people need to look at. The deprecation policy, even though it has landed, it'd be good if everyone did take a look at that and sort of understood what we have landed. There is a pull request to deprecate node dash debug at runtime. That'd be useful for people to review. And a runtime deprecation of fs.sync_write_stream. And also there's a PR to remove that I think is mine, might be even approved, node_tty unsafe async environment variable. Any comments on any of that? Okay, I think we're good. We can dive in then. So assert, enforce, type check in deep strict equal. Who wants to take that?
So this was mine. Although I think I would actually suggest that we go right to modules, because that's going to be the wild card. That's either going to not take a lot of time or that's going to take the whole meeting. So we might as well get that out of the way, is my preference, if that's cool.
Sure, does everyone else want to do that? I'm cool with that.
Sounds okay.
So modules.
Sure. So we have a vote to cast today on whether Node wants to ship a synchronous loader or an asynchronous loader. We had a little bit of a catch-up meeting around 2 weeks ago on the topic. Essentially, it, from a user perspective, boils down to when you require an ES module, do you get a promise back or do you get a module namespace object? There are concerns about temporal dead zones with the module namespace object. However, that is how Babel currently works, is you basically require your ES module, you get an object back. This is roughly equivalent to that. For an asynchronous loader, you would get a promise back, and that matches the behavior of import as a function. It still technically has a dead zone, but you can't get to it because you have to use .then or a wait of some kind to turn the event loop, and once the event loop turns, the dead zone's already gone. However, that's not how Babel works and would require a decent amount of ecosystem refactor. On the other side of things, not exactly related to this, we already have some ecosystem refactor hazards going on because we won't be able to do property delegation to get named imports, at least not out the door. So the real question here is, do we want to ship this asynchronous loader or ship this other synchronous loader? And so if anybody has questions before voting, now's the time.
I kind of want to hear from the people who were actually at the TC39 meeting, but actually Jeremiah has a question, so go Jeremiah.
Like I just want to note that like we're not really required to vote on this, but like unless someone calls for a vote that's on the CTC, are you wanting us to vote just because that would be more clear to TC39? I mean, we could
We have to
all
pick
be
one,
in
and
all be in consensus of doing it one way or other, and not have to vote according to our processes.
correct, but we do need a direction to go to, and voting is the only route I have seen that actually gives me direction. Otherwise, I am just told to do whatever, and that's not very helpful.
Yeah, I think I think the TC39 would really like to see a clear decision from us in terms of what we want, rather than it being, well, you know, we seem to have an idea, seem to have a preference one way or not. It should be rather clear. If we're not able to come up with a clear decision, then I think it's, you know, that also says something too.
So James, do you fall on? Do you have a strong opinion?
I'm not sure yet. I mean, when it comes to this, I want to make sure, personally, I think we need to make sure we have a very clear separation between our module systems, where Choir and, you know, where imports only being used if we're looking at it from a ES6 modules point of view, in which case, if we need to change some of the semantics and have voting be async in some cases, then okay. There just needs to be very clear separation between that and using require and what we expect there. I'm still forming my opinion on it. It's not super clear to me yet.
Okay. How about Miles? Do you have an opinion?
So I have an opinion, but it's not necessarily a fully qualified one. As much as we can keep behavior between Node and the browser similar, the better. Now, the problem here, and Brad, feel free to jump in if I'm off on anything, but the biggest problem is going to be interop. And if we want to have like real interop, it's going to be hard to do that if we're mixing between sync and async modes. But what's going to start getting really weird, in my opinion, is, you know, as import is getting adopted across the web, and as some of these major platforms, and I'll use like Lodash for example, start implementing everything expecting an async loader, we're going to find ourselves in a really, really weird place when there's potential behavior differences between the two platforms. And it's going to get even weirder when like that behavior difference causes things to have to go upstream, and all of a sudden you're going to have to do like, you know, environment checks in ways that we like. I mean, obviously there are still behavior differences between the two, but not in the sense of a loader right now. And I can imagine that that's going to be quite painful.
Currently, there are not observable differences except for the promise task queue. That is in the air, and some people are changing to expose the asynchronous nature of import more readily in the browser. So I think over time, the browsers are going to be moving more and more towards async loading. So I would agree.
How about Anna, since she was at the meeting? Do you have any opinion you want to express on this?
So one thing that I would like to say, and I think I confirmed that with Bradley, is that having a sync loader would mean that Node can't do like any future implementation of top level await, and that would kind of suck. So generally, I think I agree with what Miles said and the direction in which I think Bradley is tending to, which is like having an async loader, even if it sucks. But yeah.
Bradley, do you have anything you want to add to anything?
Yeah, we got into a little bit of a social media tiff last night about top level await. So there are different parts of TC39 because it's a very individual driven place. And some people really want to push for top level await. And to the extent that they're viewing Node as being okay if Node cannot support it. Like Anna said, if we ship a synchronous loader, we can't ship top level await because it requires running JS code on different turns of the event loop. And if we ship either of these, we can't convert to the other one in the future because there's some order of eval differences for certain cases. So there isn't an option for us to ship one and then ship the other kind of loader in the future.
So I was not at TC39, and actually, like James, I'm also forming my opinion, and both of these options look like a big amount of hurt for either the JS ecosystem as a whole, meaning if we go with sync, then there's a lot of, we don't get interrupt with JavaScript. If we go with async, now we'll have a lot of issues, subtle behavior differences between people's expectations or from what a module, how modules should be loaded. And we have so much ecosystem that's written in a way that assumes that everything is going to be sync and nothing underneath the covers a few levels deep in your dependency chain is going to start suddenly behaving differently. So either of these options sound painful, and I haven't been able to form an opinion so far.
So maybe one thing, sorry, Bradley, go ahead.
Just to note, no matter what we do, browsers are shipping an async loader. So, I mean, even if people's expectations currently are for synchronous, browsers don't have an option to ship a synchronous loader. So go ahead, Anna.
Okay, so one thought that I had is that I would expect the modules adoption to start like from the end user kind of yeah, like in applications themselves and not necessarily in the ecosystem, because like for the foreseeable future, all npm modules are going to use CommonJS because like just to support old versions of Node. So having an async loader might not be as painful because I think it's still it won't make any problems loading CommonJS modules from ES6 modules. So that, yeah, that doesn't seem as bad as the other way around.
Does anyone who hasn't said anything have any questions or comments on this?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I set up a meeting with 3 people to kind of get a better idea from people who actually help new people learn JavaScript and Node, or have done that in the past, or programming in general. What they thought would be better for people now and in the future learning these things. So I talked to Ashley Williams, who's previously done education stuff, Steve Kilney from Turing School, and Ryan Castani of HackerU, and pretty much everyone agreed, not really necessarily moving my opinion, but I want to share these anyways. So no matter what we do, it'd be really good if we could have behavior around existing things, specifically require, be explicit. So if we do change it, sorry, no matter which way we do it, but more specifically for the async case, where you could have 2 behaviors from require, it would be a lot better if we could just not have require do that, like return a promise at all, since we'll have to rewrite stuff for it anyways. Also, everyone was kind of in agreement that everything essentially being future-proof and what people could learn on the browser and a node would be similar and not terribly surprising. Also, a big point that was brought up is because the async loader would handle circular dependencies very well, and that is something that newcomers get stuck on a lot and is kind of very difficult for them to solve. That would be really good. So yeah. So that's that perspective.
Thanks.
I still think it will be very painful for the existing ecosystem to move onto ES modules. I think it's a nice sentiment to have that modules won't necessarily be the first ones to switch to using ES modules, but I'm worried that there still will be a large enough portion that will cause large downstream issues, and well, yeah.
Did they have any suggestions for the case of not returning promises? What?
Essentially either require.import or if import statements are available in scripts.
Import as a function is available everywhere.
Yeah, so essentially just that, and that being consistent for so the idea that if you are like in a script that you'd always use require to require other CJS, and then if you're trying to import an ES module, you would always do it with like import or something.
So for the benefit of people listening on the stream, I want to read what I wrote in the chat for everybody that nobody's responded to, which I'm going to take as meaning that people generally agree with it. So since we're voting on an EP, what we're really saying with it, well, if we vote, what we're really saying is, if we had to build this today, this is how we think we'd do it. It's not a commitment to doing it. It's still entirely possible that Bradley or someone else will work on this for a few weeks and find horrible, horrible problems, and we can come back and change our minds. Like that's basically where we're at. Does anybody disagree with that?
Pretty much. I think I've looked into implementing it pretty heavily already. Just haven't released anything. So, but no, we're not calling and saying this is something we can't back out of. We can still back out of it, but we need a direction to get the final go-ahead to start implementing stuff.
Okay, does anybody else have anything to add before people who are comfortable expressing a view one way or the other express it?
I mean, I kind of wish Trevor was here. I know he has very strong opinions on the async part being potentially very complex if people do lots of import functions and mix those with other things. You can get into some interesting race cases.
We're probably unlikely to actually have a decisive vote here, and we'll have to solicit other votes in GitHub. So fortunately, he'll probably have an opportunity.
I have a question. So on the first little paragraph in the minutes, it suggests that should require return a promise or an object. Is that supposed to be import, or is this going to be changing what require returns as well?
So, no matter what, import as a function will return a promise. It will never do any actual evaluation on the same tick, so it is always asynchronous. In all the existing EPs we've accepted so far, we've somewhat mandated that you be able to require ES modules, and you be able to import CommonJS. With what Jeremiah said, it may seem that require should throw when you try to get a hold of an ES module, according to those people who've more experience teaching things, which
Correct.
would be different than anything we've accepted.
So
that was in fact the suggestion, was to throw from require if you tried to require it.
So to answer Evan's question, just to make sure, require we're talking about discussing the behavior of require, not import.
Not necessarily true. We are discussing the behavior of the loader underneath each, and it will apply for both.
So if we go with the async module loader, if you require even a common JS module, it will be loaded asynchronously. Is that correct or no?
No. But if you require an ES module, it would be, if that were to work, whichever way. Essentially, any interactions with ES modules from a common JS module or another ES module would be asynchronous to load them. Or I guess like if you interact with loading ES modules, or if you load from ES modules, that would be either synchronous or asynchronous.
Yes, we are not able to change any of the common JS loader. We will have 2 separate loaders no matter what when we ship ES modules.
I don't like this throwing idea.
I feel like a lot of people are going to be surprised with that we have both a synchronous and an asynchronous loader if we go with the asynchronous loader.
Not only surprised, I mean, the behavior differences are going to be very hard to debug.
Yeah. It introduces the max complexities into it. I don't think we have any good way right now of even remotely estimating the difficulty it's going to be to switch back and forth or be able to support both.
But no matter what we do, the browsers will always have an async loader. So really we're talking about compatibility with Babel or compatibility with the future web. I mean,
I don't really think so. I think either we have compatibility with the future web or compatibility with ourselves, essentially.
Yeah, that's the way I'm seeing it. Like, I don't see the compatibility of future web as being near as relevant as like not breaking everything for everybody else. Like breaking
they're already breaking everything. Every module pretty much I've ever seen on NPM because of the named imports.
Yeah, but those people are like already transpiling. I guess that doesn't really matter. I mean, like, it kind of matters, but.
So don't kill me for saying this, Bradley, but what if we just didn't implement them?
Well, we've already seen people willing to fork Node and just throw a loader in, so that's probably what would happen.
Yeah. Okay, so I remember something being said a while back about future modules or future, instead of adding a new global, like new language features would be added via modules. How would that work if we went with this? If we went the synchronous route, I mean, I'm sure that would have some kind of effect on that, right?
If we go with a synchronous route, we have a lot of effects on TC39 that TC39 is not happy about if that happens. Part of it is top level await wouldn't happen. We'd be able to get a hold of these module namespace objects reliably because they're a static shape. You know what properties they have after parsing. But they have the same problem that let and const can have, where if they are not fully initialized and you try to access a property off them, it throws an error. So if you try to access an imported variable and it hasn't been initialized because it requires some asynchronous thing, or it's a circular dependency, then it throws on variable access.
We're coming up on the end of the. I mean, like we basically have a choice at this point. We can keep talking about this and decide that we're not talking about anything else on the agenda, which I'd be okay with, but I'm not sure everybody else would. Or we can try to make a decision on this now, or we can decide that we're not actually going to make a decision on this today, and we need to make a decision in GitHub or something, or I don't know. But what are we going to do with our remaining 12 minutes?
I'm going to answer two quick questions from the chat that are specifically about this. So why does Node want to have synchronous imports? That is so that you could using require an ES module and have it act exactly the same or essentially the same to your perspective using it as requiring a CommonJS module. And also, if Node follows the spec, would it be required to add .js to the paths? Nope, it's not required in browsers either. They use content type detection. We actually use extension detection. So yeah, vote or no?
Yeah, actually, let me phrase this another way. Who here feels who in attendance today feels like they are informed enough and have formulated an opinion sufficiently that they're willing that they could actually vote on something? Like who has an opinion?
I do, but I can't vote.
I kind of do, but I don't like it.
I have an
kind of in the
opinion.
same
I don't know if it's informed enough though.
I have an opinion, and I also very much dislike having to have an opinion.
All right, so that's two people who have opinions, who can vote, who feel like, you know, that it's informed. And Evan, you said you weren't sure if yours was informed or not.
Yeah, I mean, I've read through all of the documents. I just, I don't know. I'm almost on the fence. Leaning more towards, I almost am leaning more towards synchronous though. And take that for what it's worth.
How about this as a suggestion? Rather than voting today, let's delay one more week, no more than one more week. Following this conversation here, which has been helpful. Let's vote next week.
So, let me clarify. Are you actually calling for a vote next week?
Yes.
I second that.
The downside, in my opinion, is that very little is likely to happen between now and next week, and we're likely to largely have this conversation again.
This is true.
That's true. We just
I don't
need
know if there's a better alternative.
Let me put it this way. I'm calling a vote between now and next week.
We need everyone to just really take a look and firm up their opinions, myself included. I'm including myself in that. I've been struggling to come up with a firm opinion one way or the other. And we just need to call it. All right, so.
Okay, well, since we're not apparently going to actually do that today, let's try to pick off something else from this agenda since there are other agenda items.
Assert will be fast, and it was on last week, so I wouldn't mind doing that one.
Okay, how about it?
Okay, so hey, for a long time we've been treating the assert module's locked status as sort of like we're not going to fix bugs in it unless it affects us in our tests, and I don't think that's right. I think we should. I think if you know, if someone wants to make it work with maps, you know, make assert equal work with maps or something or whatever is broken with it, we ought to accept those things as long as it does not, you know, as long as we don't expect it to cause, you know, ecosystem breakage, and as long as it's not adding new API components, as long as it's just, you know, doesn't change the actual API, you know, the method signatures. And I think the CTC should make a firm decision on that one way or the other, because there's definitely some people who feel one way and some people who feel the other way. So I would like to call for a vote on that.
Do we already have like existing CTC people that are like conflicting, or are we just able to get consensus on it?
Yes, I was going to ask you, does anyone on the call object to what Rich just described?
I mean, I'm pretty sure I've suggested in the past that I think we should actually, I think it's, or the way we deal with the assert module is perhaps a little bit silly, although we do need to be careful about it. I think the current policy was to not change it except if we needed it, but that's like kind of weird. Maybe we should just deprecate the entire thing if that's really the case, but.
Right, or at least deprecate it if we're not gonna, if that's our attitude. But anyway, someone else.
If we're gonna deprecate, it would make sense that we should at least like break it out into a module that people can install. But it seems to me the kind of thing that would be pretty breaking. A lot of people are relying on our assert, whether or not, like, I'm pretty sure if you go in and take a look at like glob, assert is being used in there, like whether or not we want it being used.
No one is suggesting removal, and I'm not proposing deprecation here. I'm just proposing that we be clear about what we mean by locked.
Let's unlock it.
I actually wouldn't mind keeping it locked, to be honest, just as long as we agree that we can, that like, you know, fixing it for like new ES elements of the language is not like, you know, doesn't require unlocking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think like we probably want to add new features to it, like pretty much ever, if possible. But I mean, I mean, there's been at least in like ES6 new deep structures added, specifically like maps and sets, and I mean treating those differently than we do objects or the objects or arrays. It just seems strange and kind of archaic to me.
Okay, here's what I'm doing.
Okay. I just wanted to ask. Sorry.
Yeah, go
I just wanted to ask Jeremiah for clarification, because like, are you suggesting that we like should do proper deep equal checks for maps, or that we should not, like keep it as it is?
I think we should.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to write this up. I'm going to write this up as a separate, like, I'm gonna remove this label from the mostly unrelated PR that it was attached to, and I'm going to write this up as something separate that then CTC, you know, I'll put a CTC review label on it, and people can you know, +1 LGTM or whatever, and hopefully that'll just take care of this, and I can leave everybody alone about it, and then we can go about fixing bugs that are in the assert module.
You can just open a PR against the documentation that resets the stability indicator.
I'm okay with it being locked, just as a signal that like we're not going to add new methods to it. I'm okay with that, just as long as we don't treat locked as meaning that we're not going to fix bugs. That's my issue. Like, I think the fact that it treats maps differently than objects is a bug.
So one thing I think that may be worth looking at this as like a higher level thing that we could fix is maybe we need to change our system in general for how locked works. Because when the language wasn't moving as fast, locked made sense. In the fact that you wouldn't have to add new things. But since since it's kind of like we're having new things come every year, we may be needing to make changes to all sorts of locked APIs in order to support the new language features. So perhaps this is a higher level thing of like rediscussing what our locked policy means in general across the entire project.
I agree. I think someone should open a separate thing for that we can maybe discuss over the week or next week. But like similarly, the module system is locked, and doing ES modules would essentially be in the similar category.
I can take care of putting something together for that.
That would be great. Let's see. What else can we still discuss? Node inspect. Josh, if you're here, I think you're sort of leading that.
Yeah, I didn't put that on the agenda. I think somebody put it on last week and it's just stayed on. So I put the two open questions that are related to that, which is essentially, are we okay with landing it in depths? And also, are we okay with the proposed integration? I think that's the two things we need people to chime in on that thread on. I don't know if there's anything else to discuss here now.
I mean, I think I'm okay with it landing in the depths in some way. Well, in core in some way. I was actually thinking about it. I think it wouldn't be too hard in the future if we really wanted its code base to live in core, or if it was living in core and we wanted it to move out and vendor it. I don't think either way would be too difficult to do. So I'm not sure if it really matters too much in which way we do it at first. It might be an interesting experiment to try vendoring it. We haven't really done that for anything else. I mean, NPM does that, but we don't control NPM, so it might be a good experiment for the future regardless if we do that.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with that, in that there may be other modules we want to do the same thing for. So.
Anyone else have thoughts on this?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so lib plus this global clobbered thing that we discussed at the start is on here, but PR has not been updated at all, so I don't think we have anything to say on that. Does anyone have anything to note on the HTTP support for environment defined proxy? Take that as a no. So just at the end here, I think that's everything unless someone else specifically has someone. Someone brought this up and wanted us to discuss it if we had time. So there is a Semver major pull request for symbol key prompts to be visible in inspection by default. I think from util.inspect that is. So I have labeled that with CTC review. I'm not sure if anyone has anything to note here, but then we can at least get a decision on it.
But that one already has 3 CTC members reviewing it. It's mostly that James has an objection to it. So that's probably where to look in that.
Cool. Okay, let's go on to at least solicit for questions on public channels. So if you have questions about anything Node.js related, please drop them into the YouTube chat or into Node Dev in Freenode IRC. We'll still be on for a minute to answer those. In the meantime, upcoming meetings. Let's look at this calendar. I think at what time zone is this in? At 7 p.m. GMT tomorrow, there is a benchmarking working group meeting for profile guided optimization. And then there's another one the next day at 2 p.m. UTC for.
Yeah, I don't think that first time was quite right.
That's what's on the calendar, 7 p.m. GMT.
Or maybe GMT, okay.
Yeah, this isn't GMT for some reason, not UTC. And 2 p.m. UTC, and then next week at 5 a.m. GMT, I think that's the early CTC meeting. Yeah, it'll be at 5 a.m. GMT.
North America, that's late night.
Yeah, late night the previous day, I should mention.
In North America.
Yes. And then Thursday next week, at the regular time, there is a TSC meeting. That's at 8 p.m. GMT. Yeah. So we have like the most viewers we've ever had at like 21 concurrent. So the person who brought up that issue that we last discussed asks, what would help bring most people into knowing this issue other than time? I think the CTC review label should hopefully help with that. Does anyone else have comments? I guess not. All right. Well, I don't really see anything else. We already did, answered the ES modules things. Oh, that person meant what would bring the most people into the modules discussions. I mean, those have been around for a while, so I think really just means that probably we need to track down and cut out times in our schedules to actually look at that fully. All right. I think we can wrap up the public section at least, in case anyone has anything for the private section. Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks.